Today, we are taking on, well, one of those really intangible things, but something absolutely critical for your career. We're talking about the true strength, maybe even the measurable strength, of your professional relationships. I mean, we all have these huge networks, right? Hundreds, maybe thousands of connections online, endless group chats, calendars, just jam-packed with video calls. But how many of those actually count? When you really need support or trust or someone in your corner. So we're basically hunting for a shortcut today, trying to find the quantitative truth, maybe, behind what builds those really powerful professional bonds, moving past the easy stuff like physical proximity or just the sheer number of meetings.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a source called La Métrique du Lien Professionnel. That's the metric of professional connection. It's quite interesting. It tries to put some structure, some modest maths, as the author calls it, around this very human, kind of messy concept. And the author kicks off by drawing on, I think it's 16 years of managing teams remotely with their company Finelis. They really challenge this standard corporate thinking straight away. The big idea, the thing you need to kind of hold on to is this. Strong professional connection. It's not built by being in the same office or having endless video calls. Instead, it depends on three sort of human factors: sincerity, frequency, and this is crucial, the nature of the interaction itself.
Okay, let's unpack that challenge because, for most companies these days, collaboration gets measured by proximity and volume, right? It's all about who shared the most screens or who clocked the most hours in Teams or Zoom last month. Those are the metrics you see. So this initial observation from the source, it's really fascinating. After managing remote teams for, over a decade, they found the strength of the connection it didn't line up with physical presence or how many Teams meetings you had, which must feel, liberating on one hand, but it also means you need a totally new way to think about and measure professional capital.
Yeah, it creates this huge vacuum, doesn't it? If the usual corporate stuff, meeting counts, email chains, how much time you spend virtually in the same space, if that's not enough, then what is the roadmap? How do we gauge bond strength when we're not always, physically together? Well, the source tries to answer that. It identifies these three core pillars, the sort of qualitative ingredients for a real connection, and they formalize it into this new metric, FSQ. So first up is frequency, F, you need regular contact, obviously. Second, sincerity, S, which is about the genuine sort of non-corporate feel of the exchange. And third, the quality of the exchange. Yeah. So how meaningful, how deep is what you actually share?
FSQ, frequency, sincerity, quality. That feels different. It feels like it prioritizes genuine human investment over just, ticking boxes on a timesheet. And what's interesting is they didn't just leave it as a concept. They actually turned it into a proposed KPI, this FSQ metric, for their client reports. It's presented as this sort of easy-to-use framework where the value isn't about cost, but about the insight it gives you, shifting that focus from time spent to the quality you're delivering in that relationship.
Right, which brings us nicely to the structure of this modest maths. Even if we don't have the exact weightings, apparently they're proprietary intellectual property. The equation itself gives us a really clear signal about which interactions we should be prioritizing. So they model the relationship strength, the lean or link, like this, link arrow, WAO plus WARM plus WAON. The whole point of this structure is to assign different values, those W weights, to different types of interaction, the Ns. It's the formal way of saying, look, not all networking time is created equal. Some interactions just pack more punch.
Okay, so let's break down those weight categories then. WO and WAS. Because this weighting, this is basically the instruction manual, isn't it? It tells us exactly where we should focus our, let's be honest, limited time if we want to build the strongest connections. So we start at the top, WAS. This gets the maximum impact. Wow, the heaviest weight. And what kind of interactions fall into this top tier? Well, they're defined as moments shared outside of business. The French term used is hors business, so interactions with family, close friends, but also, crucially, any time that strict professional mask kind of drops and you get real human sharing.
Exactly. And if Euro is maximum impact, then who represents the mid-level impact stuff? Still really valuable because they keep that focus, that one-on-one aspect, but they are clearly professional. We're talking about genuine one-to-one, maybe face-to-face things like a proper coffee, a focused phone call, or a real dedicated meeting, a rendezvous. And then finally we get to WISE, lowest impact. And this is the category that should probably make most of us stop and think. It's the catch-all for all those high-volume, maybe low-sincerity interactions, emails, session, newsletters, and significantly any meeting with more than 3 people, especially those big group video call sessions.
Wow, okay. That structure, that weighting, is a pretty dramatic critique of the modern corporate calendar, isn't it?
I know.
How much does it really push back against how most big organizations schedule time?
Oh, it's a powerful indictment, absolutely. The framework basically validates what I think most of us feel deep down, right? All that time we spend in those huge group video conferences, the classic WOG interactions that just dominate our work lives, they actually contribute minimally, almost negligibly, to building a strong, resilient professional link. And the implied reason, based on the source, seems to be about attention and sincerity. In a big group call, your attention is split, right? Psychological safety can be lower. The conversation is often quite scripted, maybe low in real emotion. So those sincerity S and quality Q factors in FSQ just plummet, which means you get minimal bond building no matter how frequently you have those calls.
But so what here is huge then?
Yeah.
You could potentially have, 100 of those WOG interactions,
Yeah.
and they still wouldn't add up to the value of just one really sincere, focused warrior moment.
That's the implication.
It's basically a formal argument that quality absolutely smashes quantity when it comes to relationship building. Every single time. Okay, but this raises a really practical question. What does that high impact, outside of business, Waro moment actually look like? We need to kind of shift from the math back to the people, because the source gives some specific stories, anecdotes that really make the formula click, I think.
Yeah, the first example is about deal making. The source says pretty clearly that, in the world of professional deals, nothing beats a true coffee to seal a deal. It's not the fancy signing ceremony or the confirmation email. It's that personal one-to-one chat, a high euro interaction that really lays the foundation of trust that makes the deal stick.
That makes sense. That feels intuitive. But the story that really nails the power of what it outside of business interaction, that's the one about the tennis accident, isn't it?
Precisely. Yeah, the author talks about playing tennis with a client named Zabia. And during the game, Zabia gets injured. And that shared experience, the immediate reaction, the concern, just the human response to a setback they experienced together that was noted as being a strong moment shared, much more significant than a closing deal they'd actually finalized earlier.
Hang on. So spraining an ankle with a client, that's statistically emotionally more valuable to the professional relationship than successfully closing a big contract with them. That sounds completely upside down compared to how the business world usually thinks.
It is. And that's why this framework is so sort of provocative and powerful. The injury itself, totally unrelated to business. But it created this intense shared emotional moment. And that emotion, that shared vulnerability maybe, built the connection far more effectively than any amount of formal work-related back and forth could. This links right back to the core finding. The strongest professional bonds. They grow from true emotion, regularity, and genuine human sharing. Stuff that goes way beyond the usual corporate script. Like, way beyond.
So, okay, we're not saying everyone needs to take up golf immediately.
No.
But it's more about finding activities or context where that sincerity can flourish, where genuine emotional exchange is possible. That's the accelerator for the relationship strength.
Exactly right. The specific activity or location doesn't matter as much. The key is the lack of that corporate script, that formal barrier. And this explains why sometimes those really solid professional alliances you see, the ones born in, say, sports leagues or community groups or even volunteering, why they often feel much stronger, more resilient than connections made just sitting around a boardroom table. In those other environments, sincerity, that S factor, is just naturally maximized.
Right. Okay. So just to quickly recap the core ideas from this deep dive for you listening, we've established that the real strength of professional relationships, according to this source, isn't found in just being nearby or having loads of meetings. It comes down to those three pillars, FSQ: frequency, sincerity, and quality.
And through the lens of that modest maths, that weighting system, we saw that interactions get valued very differently. Maximum impact was reserved for those moments shared outside the strict business context, genuine human sharing, real emotion, while conversely, those high-volume, multi-person corporate meetings, the waste stuff, they barely move the needle.
It really is a complete shift in perspective, isn't it? If you're aiming for real resilience, real strength in your professional network, you might actually need to step out of the big virtual conference room, skip that multi-person call, and instead make time for a proper one-on-one coffee or invest in sincere, non-corporate interactions.
Yeah, and maybe here's the final thought to chew on, drawing directly from the source's implications. If those WERO interactions, the outside of business ones, truly carry the maximum impact, then take a hard look at your calendar. What mandatory URI meetings are sitting there right now that you could potentially scrap? And, more importantly, How could you justify that decision to your boss or your team using this FSQ logic, focusing on quality over sheer volume? That's the real challenge this source throws down for the modern professional, I think.
Definitely some food for thought there. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.